You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. We're going to get started. Town of Branford Board of Finance budget public hearings for fiscal year 23-24. And today's Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. And so tonight is a continuation of the public hearings that we started last night. Before we get into the particular departments, excuse me, I'd like to provide an overview of the total budget requirements presented to the Board of Finance, $135,173,946, an increase of 8.3%. And I might say that's compared to an overall approved budget last year of 2.9. Net to be raised from taxation after accounting for revenues and fund balance contribution would be $118,492,000, which would be an $8 million increase in tax raised to be taxed for taxes. Grand list right now is estimated at $3,879,790,000, up 1.8%. Comparatively, last year was up 3.2%. So the increase has not been as generous as it was in prior years. The estimated mill rate with this level of expenditures and revenues is 31.27, which would be an increase of 1.8 mills. Again, last year we were fortunate to not have to raise the mill rate at all. Just might point out that the total expenditures on the town side is 8.1, and the Board of Ed operating request is 5.8. So as you folks may know, the Board of Finance will meet, as met last night, will meet tonight, will meet Thursday night to hear all the departments. At that point in time, we'll close the public hearing. Board of Finance members will work among themselves and then re-meet on Monday to recommend a budget to the RTM, who will have their deliberations and pass an expenditure budget. Those budgets will come back to the Board of Finance sometime in May. We'll set the mill rate and finalize the revenues. So with that, we'll start off tonight, and tonight's, again, continuation of the public hearing. These are RTM Administrative Service Committee departments, and first off is Probate Court. Judge Chuck Kiernan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before the Finance Board to present our budget for the Probate Court for the years 2023 and 2024. We've asked for, or we're asking for an increase of 8.7%. Some things have increased. Microfilming has gone up since the end of COVID, and we have a lot more going on with respect to that. I think another big cost, toner and paper, is the biggest expense because e-filing began. Since e-filing began, we've been using much more paper and toner. Insurance has gone up, and I think that's across the board in probably a lot of areas. For communication purposes, we use Comcast for Wi-Fi, and the monthly cost has increased. And so for this fiscal year, we would request the 8.7% increase, and I hope you'll see it that way.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. So the request is for $17,290, an increase of $1,390. Are there questions from the board?
Hey, Judge, do you use a contract out, anything?
Well, with respect to the copier maintenance, we have an agreement or contract for that.
Okay.
And I think last year, that alone was $895. And we use InfoShed for shredding.
Okay.
And I think that's That's $25 a month.
I mean, does the town do that for you, or does your office do it independently?
You know, that's a good question.
Now they, what, the shredding?
Yeah.
We don't do that.
No, they do,
No.
you
No, they
do
do-
your own.
they
They make their own contracting.
I'm only 3 months on the job.
I
so-
know, I know.
Yeah,
Wasn't-
Charlie, the other thing to remember with this is that it's a joint district. So, you know, you want to capture the costs that have probate pay those, because that's a factor in when we bill North Branford. So if the town is actually paying for it, you know, this budget's a basis for how we bill them, and when we do come up with some indirect costs, but we try to record most of them in their actual budget.
Judge, it was not a test.
Appreciate it.
So, other questions from the board? If not, questions from the RTM members or general public? If not, we thank you and
Appreciate the
Take care.
opportunity. Thank you very much.
okay, next up is tax collector, page 17. Total requests, $761,377, a decrease of $75,000. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
Hi,
Good
Bob.
evening, everyone. Hello. I'll just hit the highlights for you. Again, looking at regular wages and salaries, a small increase of 1.4. No change in the overtime from last year, 14,733. You'll see increases in the tax billing processing from $11,714 to $15,363. It's about a 31% increase. You'll see the same thing in the postage as you go down, that they go hand in hand. We went from $19,852 to $29,456, a 48% increase. Overall increase is about 13,000 and change. The reason for that is that we've picked up our collection enforcement. So what we're doing is we're doing more mailings, monthly mailings, demand mailings out to delinquent clients, and it seems to be working as our collection rate has been increasing due to that. So I'm happy with that. Hopefully you are also. Increase in our online services from $2,880 to $3,600. Two increases, LexisNexis that we use for skip tracing. They went up $50 a month. So we went from $150 to $200, and Invoice Cloud, which we use to take in our payments online, went up $10. So we have an increase in our online of $760. You'll see the refund, tax refunds that decreased. Jim Finch worked his magic numbers, and we feel that there'll be a decrease in applications for refunds on the appeals side. So that was a decrease of 17%. And that's about it. So we're looking at 761, 377.
Thanks, Bob. Questions from the board?
How's it feel, Bob, to be sitting on that side when you used to sit up here?
Oh, the sweat beads are a little, yeah, absolutely.
And tax office is running smoothly?
Yeah, we're doing well. Looked at our collection rate this morning. We're at 98.35, if I believe our system of record. So we're a little bit ahead of the game, and we still have 3 months to go before we close the fiscal year. So I'm hoping to get to 99%.
That'd be great.
Be big.
Other questions, comments?
All set.
Questions from RTM members of the general public? Not, thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Take care. Next is elections, page 22. Total request, $220,349, a decrease of $91,000. Second decrease in a row. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning, board members. Good afternoon, good evening.
Don, how you doing?
Good, I'm Howie tonight.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, if you want to hit the highlights, there's a lot of negatives here. That's because of the no primaries.
Right, that's a result of the primary, and the register salary was adjusted downward, so that makes a difference on the next line. The other stuff that basically you'll see is other purchase and services. You'll see that that's a little bit up. That is, we are going to electronic poll books for the next election, so that will entail getting a couple more computers in order to do that, and that will help facilitate transfer of who voted in an election, so that we're not doing that manually, we're doing that electronically. We'll save hours of time, and it's more accurate, so that's what we're working on. We have to train staff to do that, and we have to buy equipment, and in conjunction with that, you will see that those electronic poll books are a service we have to buy in order for to run that program, and that's where you see that 6.4%.
So that,
increase.
Dan, that's on the, what line item is that on?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's on other purchase services.
Okay.
533,900.
Okay, so that went up by $500.
Yeah.
From 4,500 to 5,000.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
And most of what you're, most of what else you see is, the only other thing that's gone up a little bit there is the meal supplies, and that's just the cost of the different restaurants we use to supply the meals. They've gone up. We use breakfast connections, and everybody knows the cost of eggs are like sky high, so they're charging us a little bit more for those things of that sort.
Okay. Okay, questions on this budget from the board? $220,349. Questions from the RTM or general public? Okay, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is IT, information technology, page 29. Total request, $1,178,342 on the operating, increase of $208,000. Welcome, Debbie.
Hello, thank you. All right, we have some increases this year, as you've noticed.
Yep.
So we can start off from the top with purchase services, an increase of just over 27%. And in large part, that's driven by an increase in cybersecurity services for data protection and cybersecurity services that we need to carry to be eligible for cybersecurity insurance. So the breakdown of that is roughly Microsoft 0365 for all our employees to have multi-factor authentication, MFA, and that's about $56,000 a year until Microsoft raises its price again next year. A service we are currently using called Arctic Wolf, which is monitoring our entire network 24/7, all our ports, everything going in and out, making sure it's secure, and if something isn't secure, they lock it down for us. They have proven to have been invaluable already, and that is $60,000 a year. And then the rest of our townwide software maintenance and renewal contracts, which had remained steady during COVID, this year increased anywhere from 4 to 30%, depending on the vendor. Any questions about that before I move on?
What was the reference to the, you talked about Office 365?
Yes.
And then what was the other application?
Arctic Wolf. The vendor is called Arctic Wolf. It's a software as a service. It's a cybersecurity endpoint protection.
So that monitors incoming traffic and outgoing traffic?
Everything, all the ports at every
Yeah.
location, everybody except for the Board of Ed, police, fire, every building. It's
Yeah.
monitoring everything going on. And actually, the first day we went live with it, that night we had a lockdown.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, it wasn't what we call, a red alert. It
Right.
was more of a yellow, but it was nice to know that the service was working and protected us.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was,
Okay.
And then me and my staff didn't have to wake up at 3 in the morning and come
Right.
into
Come in.
something that could have been maybe, worse.
Right, okay. And then the technology acquisitions?
So in technology acquisitions, there's an increase of just over 196%. And what I did this year was, if you notice, hardware is zeroed out, because I feel it would be better to have those funds, instead of them falling under hardware, being distributed between hardware and technology acquisitions, that it's better applied to technology acquisitions because there's a broader sense of what I can spend that money on. So some of that's broken down in the cost is 4 departments have aging copiers that need replacement: the senior center, animal shelter, counseling center, and finance. And their copiers are going to replace 4 older copiers at other locations. And those 4 departments really do use copying quite a bit. There's
Those
also
leased, or those leased or purchased?
No, they're purchased.
Purchased, okay.
They're purchased. My first year here, we tried leasing, and there wasn't really a financial gain to
So these are
it.
large multifunctional devices?
Yes. Yes. Printer, copy, staple, they do everything.
Scan?
Everything. You walk
Fax.
up to them, they wake up, you do
Yeah, yeah,
everything.
yeah,
It's all AI now. There's also about $11,000 that needs to be spent on upgrading uplink switches on our back end. We need to move our back end into a 10 gigabit speed, the increase in speed. We need around roughly $18,000 to add and replace aging CCTV cameras at the firehouse, and we need to add cameras at Firehouse 9. And then I've also asked this year for $75,000, which is larger than what I usually do, probably double, for just miscellaneous IT needs. And what's happened over the past 2.5 years is that with the supply chain, it's been very hard to budget properly for the full year out. Something that, for instance, we need, let's say, 8 or 9 monitors right now, and I'll try and budget what the price is now. In the past, it's usually anywhere from $100 to $150 for a 24-inch widescreen monitor. When a department might need them 4 to 6 months from now, it'll be $350, $400 a monitor. The price fluctuation, there's just no way to really know, and what is happening is when you see it, you have to buy it because it's not going to be there tomorrow. And this has happened more and more for computers, laptops, just parts, everything. So that's why this year I've asked for a bit more money to have the available funds there to get equipment when we need it.
Question, Deb, do you also oversee the telecom side of it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So that some of these technology acquisitions may or may not be in the telecom area?
No, I mean, that would fall under communications.
Okay.
So over the past 2 years, most of our departments now have been upgraded to voice-over IP phone systems, and the cost has come down. This year, there's a 9.6% increase because we still do have Comcast lines, especially as backup lines at fire and PD. And Comcast, of course, every year increases their price.
Okay.
So that's due to Comcast.
Thank you. Questions on the operating budget of $1,178,000? Charlie?
Deb, with all our cybersecurity, have we ever had a red alert?
We had an incident, but nothing that was bad enough that we needed to report it at the state or federal level. We were able to get it under control, and the way that we managed the type of incident, which was slowly turning into a ransom event, became very minor because we have 3 levels of backup. So we were able to restore an off-site level, and we lost only a few hours of work.
The other, I'm curious, what kind of copiers do you do? Or do you use Sharp copiers?
Well, we've been using the past few years Sharp because they've
That's a good
been
copier, by the way.
very, very good for us. We tried Xerox, Canon, pretty much every brand
Yeah.
and every vendor in the area, and the Sharp has worked the best for us. They
Yeah,
seem to
I've
last.
tried a few of those too, and Sharp is really the
Yeah,
best.
they seem to last at least 8 years, and then we're able to give them to other branches that get another 2 or 3 years out of them. So I'd say that's pretty good.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Sure, thanks. Other questions? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public regarding the operating budget request for information technology? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the capital requests, which are on page 44 and 46 of the capital section. First is the Dell appliance backup for $30,000.
Right, so one of the backups that we do is an on-site local backup. As I said, we have 3 levels, and the hardware that we're using for that has become outdated, and with the increase in the amount of data that we have, several terabytes, we need a newer appliance that's faster speeds, more memory. The backup is just taking way too long now. We need something that's going to process better.
So that's for $30,000. Thanks, Deb. And then the next one is the desktop computers for $60,000.
Right, so last year I used some ARPA funds and I was able to buy, I think roughly around 25 desktop computers. So what's happened is, even though Microsoft said Windows 10 was the last operating system for them, it's not, and it is going to be out of compliance end of life October 2025. So we need to upgrade a lot of older PCs that we have because they don't have what's called a TPM chip in them, a Trust Platform Module, and they will not be able to move forward to Windows 11. So we'll need another 40, and if the price goes down, I might be able to squeak out enough that next year I may not need to ask for another 20. It really depends what happens with the supply chain.
Okay, and then your last request for now is the website rebuilding for $45,000.
Right, so that was a project that I had thought initially I'd be able to do this year, but I have too many other projects. We're going to hold off until fiscal year 24-25, but we definitely need to upgrade because our website is not compliant with new coding, and there's going to be next year more online applications and compatibility with other services we'll need to have, and our website just won't cut it anymore.
Okay, great overview. Questions from the board on Debbie's presentation for capital items? Questions from the RTM members or board of other members of the public or the audience here? All right, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good evening.
You too. Next up is Elderly Services, page 44. Welcome, Dagmar. How are you?
Welcome, Elderly Services. Am I getting old?
Nah.
Yeah, we all are. We're all
Yeah.
aging.
So you have a request of $452,517?
Yep.
Okay.
And you want me to hit the highlights?
Yeah, it looks like there's not too many of them.
There's not too many. I'll be kind of brief, hopefully, for a change.
Yeah.
Just some small decreases. One decrease is in the employment testing. I do my employment testing with Yale, and that's based upon how many drivers, how old they are, et cetera, and we were able to lower it by $50. So that's that one. And then the next two are kind of related. Under travel, I reduced it about 100, And under membership conferences and meetings, 500. And that's really just, it's a positive of COVID. A lot of our trainings have gone virtual and online, and they're less expensive, and we don't have to travel as much. So I thought it prudent to reduce those costs accordingly.
Sure, that's good. So a request of $452,517, increase of $674. Questions from the board? Questions from the RTM members? General public? That's good on the operating. I think you've got a request in, if I'm not mistaken, for capital on page 24 of one of our handouts, and it's a request of $35,000 for, you want to go over that, Dax?
Yeah, that's for our sinking fund. We have a sinking fund to maintain our buses. And the last few years, we replaced 2 of our buses, a 14-passenger and a 18-passenger came, a 20-passenger. So our last one to replace is a 2008 that we just actually spec'd out. And the cost, thankfully, we have the sinking fund, because when we ordered the other 2 buses last year, 2 years ago, it took about a year and a half, 2 years to get because of supply chain things and chips. It went from $68,000 to now it's $116,000 to replace those buses. But from what Finance and Jamie told me, that's across the board in most departments. They're seeing that. And we just ordered the last one. Fortunately, we had the money in there, so I was able to spec it out, and we just put that in. And we got the last chassis under the state contract. So we're expecting delivery in the fall instead of 2 years out, where a lot of people are going to have to wait that order now.
Right, that's
so, yeah, I'm very grateful that we have the sinking fund and we're able to fund that purchase.
How many miles are on those buses?
75, 85. They're 2008s.
Okay.
And then we do sell them at auction.
Yeah.
Usually.
Get some
But a 2008, for example, one of the ones we replaced last year, the gas tank got a leak in it, and we couldn't replace it.
Yeah.
So you're stuck.
Yeah.
So you really, in public transportation, safety is like my number one thing.
Yeah.
So I really, this one has to be replaced, so we replaced it. And then now we'll start in a couple of years replacing the cars again in the medical, and that includes the medical in those, in that fund. And then we put the cars that we use back into the town fleet, and other departments use them.
That's good, okay. Questions on the capital request? Okay, any questions from RTM members of the public? You're all set, Dagmar, thank you.
So much.
Take care. Next up is Human Services, page 43. We'll go to page 69 and 70 for the special fund. 69 and 70. Welcome.
Hey, Joe.
How are you?
I'm here with Pam Davies, who is my clinical director and assistant director.
Okay, welcome, Pam.
There's 3 areas of the budget that we're going to go over, that there's been some changes on it. The first one would be the credit card processing. 40% increase because we added another $1,000 into that because we didn't have enough to cover what our fees were, because we're using the credit cards a lot, or people are using the credit cards. So we average around $250, $300 a month. So the $3,500 should cover those costs for the year.
Okay.
The other part is the purchase services. We went up on that because this area includes the electronic medical records that we use. It also includes the Zoom account that we have, which is a HIPAA-compliant account. We added a couple things to this. We have a new system called Vital Interactions, and what that is, if you go to your doc and you have an appointment next week, they send you a text, or they send you an email, or they send you a reminder. And that's what we're doing with this. So it helps us contact our clients to say, oh, you have an appointment next week at X time. Instead of having the staff try to make the phone calls, this does it automatically.
That's text-based?
It's text, email, or voice, and it does all 3 of those, which is good. And it also can send out announcements to the staff if there's like a major storm or something. All the staff are around this too, so they'll be able to get notifications from us. And it's been working pretty well. And the whole idea is to reduce the amount of no-shows that happen in this business.
Right,
You know.
right.
So that's been working pretty well. The other things, SurveyMonkey, which we need to do a survey to be in compliant with our license. Compliancy Group, it's a group that we belong to that gives us updates on HIPAA policies and changes. So we stay on top of that with this group. And the last one is just a mobile card reader, because at some point when we get out there, if we do fundraisers and stuff, we can be able to collect some donations. The last one is the basic needs account, and that went up by $50,000. And I'm going to refer it to Jim, because Jim has a great plan for this that I think he can explain a lot better than I can.
Okay, that's on page 70.
Yeah.
Page 70, yeah.
50,000.
50,000.
Okay, Mr. Finch?
Yeah, and thank you, Peter. Basically, you may recall last year when we did some of the ARPA funding, one of the areas where we increased was basic needs. So last year's ARPA plan had $100,000 for basic needs. The idea was that we would taper that out as ARPA would eventually go away. So for this year, we're going to be discussing, most likely on Thursday, reducing that ARPA request to $50,000 and the $50,000 going into his budget, and then in fiscal year '25, then it would be another $50,000 his budget. ARPA goes away, but we use those ARPA dollars as a glide path to increase his ability to provide basic needs in the community.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. And so, question, I think you skimmed over the first one, wages, regular wages and salaries, increase of 32,000.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, yeah. What we did, we looked at two job descriptions. We have two staff members that the responsibilities have increased. And so one is the case manager, and the other one is our compliance executive person who does, she's involved with the billing piece of it, she's involved with the HIPAA compliance piece of it, she's involved with the EHR for sure. And there's a lot more responsibilities that are coming with this. So we talked to HR about increasing them just to kind of fit into a range that's going to be conducive to what they're doing. And the other two are two clinicians, and we brought them up kind of moderately to kind of fit them into the range that's compliant with the social workers that are around the community.
Okay.
So that's why it comes up to 2.5.
All right. So that detail is on page 83 for those who, of the salary guide. Questions on the operating from the board?
Hi, Pete.
Charlie?
Listen, under basic needs, do you find housing,
I'm sorry, say it again?
under basic needs, do you find housing for people?
No, we don't find housing. I mean,
Okay,
if
so
we
you don't
know
temporarily-
if we know somebody has an apartment available, then we directly,
No, I was thinking of the motels.
the motels.
Yeah.
That's temporary housing. So,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we do that. We do temporary housing. We don't do any permanent housing for people.
No, but like if you put somebody in a motel, how long would they be there?
The plan, if somebody is homeless, our plan is to put them in a motel for at least a week. And in that time, we ask them to get involved with it's called the CAN system, which is Coordinated Access Network, which is, they call 211, and they get on a list, or they try to get on a shelter list. If they don't do that, we just keep them in there for a week. We try not to do more than 2 weeks, because that process takes a little time. We need to see them that they're going to be moving forward and not just staying in a motel. So we want them to get involved in the bigger system and trying to get placed in some shelter someplace.
I mean, do all the hotels cooperate?
No, we use Motel 6.
Or Motel 6?
Yes.
Not the Branford?
No.
Okay.
Okay, other questions on the operating from the board members? Questions from RTM members or members of the public? Okay, we're good on operating request of $1,913,499, an increase of $99,000. And do you have a capital request in?
I do.
on page 42 of that section, and the first one looks like a new electric vehicle. Is that the right one?
Yes, sir.
For $42,315.
Yes.
Okay, is that a Tesla? What is it?
It's no, I wish it was, Joe.
It's a used Tesla.
A used Tesla, yeah. No, it's a Kia Niro. It's the same car that our police social worker uses at the PD. And I think we're looking for a car that's going to be a little bit more reliable than the ones that we've been getting, the hand-me-downs we've been getting from the senior center. These cars, we're transporting people in these cars, and it's hard sometimes when there's a flood in the passenger side and we can't sit in there for a variety of reasons. And we just got a new charging station at our building, which is great. And I think that the town is trying to go green. So I think going along with that whole sentiment, that it'd be nice if we get a car that we're going to be able to be safe with as we're driving our clients, which would be kids or elderly people. And, we don't travel much, we just travel around town.
Okay, thank you on that one. And the second request is office furniture.
So our office furniture hasn't been changed or repaired in years. So we have two sections. We have a front section that we're going to be replacing very soon. Then there's the back section where we have two people. We have our builder and we have our office manager. This furniture is really falling apart. It's old metal stuff, and what we're trying to do is get something that's going to be more conducive for them to work in. And since we're going to replace the front part of it, the back part should go along, so they'll have more space and they could be more productive for us.
Is the back office?
Back office space, yeah, of the administrative offices.
Sure. Questions on this capital request? Charlie?
Okay, is the charging station working now?
It is. I was told that it is. Nobody's used it yet. But I think people can go there, right? They can go there.
They're operational. Actually, somebody's using one right out for this meeting. I saw somebody had their car plugged in, so.
So Board of Finance members would be able to use the one at the counseling center? If they need?
Sure, yeah, if you're there, yeah.
Only if you use the credit card that goes into our account.
Oh, you have to use a credit card?
No, you have to pay, you have to pay.
You do pay for it,
No,
yeah.
it's not free charging.
I wasn't asking for me, but I was just for other members.
Listen, where would you
Charlie, you
house,
can have whatever you want there.
where would you house the car?
Like we house the other one, it'd be there. We can plug it in.
Outside though?
Outside, sure.
Okay, so it'd be overnight outside?
Overnight outside, as all our vehicles, so,
Okay.
or the one vehicle we have is overnight outside, yeah.
Okay, other questions of the Capitol? Questions from the RTM members or members of the public? Okay, you're all set, thank you. Nice to meet you, take care. Next up is East Shore Health District, page 45. East Shore Health. Welcome, Michael.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay, page 45, your request is for the $363,189, I believe?
83.
Yes, it is. Good evening. Michael Pascasilla, East Shore District Health Department. Just to kind of walk you through our budget. As a regional local health department, our funding comes from several different sources. It's local per capita, which you have in front of you, from our 3 towns. Small state per capita, some grants, and then some fee for services for licensing and permits. What we do, we set it per capita, and the per capita is set at $12.89. It's based on population. Branford's population is 28,176 residents. That is based on census data from the federal government, certified by the state. It's always 2 years in arrear. And so that gives us our base funding of $363,189. The mosquito control budget, we manage that, but that is not in our budget, that's in the town budget. They pay the invoices, we just manage the program. And then we have the pump-out vessel program. It's a regional program with 5 towns. Each town is asked to pay $3,000. And so last year to this year, if we look at our core budget, the increase is $22,528.
Okay, so, and we don't really have the detail of your budget. Maybe you could send that to Jim, and you could distribute it. They usually have a larger breakdown of that at times.
I do, and I thought I sent it. I'm pretty sure I sent it.
Well,
But
we'll
it's
get it.
okay.
You might have gotten lost
yes.
in
Yeah.
in that new application that we have. We're working, this is a transitional year, so we're working through it, so. But you could, we can the board, you could send that to the board after the fact. So I think we're fine, Michael.
I have a copy of it. I mean, I could send it to you, too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right.
So, the court request here is really, as Michael pointed out, the total budget is $383,001. The East Shore Health District itself is $363,189. That's our pro rata share. Are there questions on the operating budget? Okay, questions from the RTM members or general public with regards to the East Shore Health District request? And I don't think you have any capital items, do you, Mike? No, I think it's all embedded in your
It's all,
numbers.
yes.
Okay. Anything else we should know about?
The only thing I just wanted to say publicly is I need to thank Selectman Cosgrove and Chief Mahoney for the ambulance that we have that we're converting into a public health mobile clinic. We would not be able to offer some of those community services without that vehicle. And so I just want to publicly thank the Selectman and the Chief.
Okay. Thank you for offering that. Okay, you're all set, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Next is Assessor, page 15. Request of $494,271, increase of $28,727. Welcome, Barbara.
Welcome. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I was told just hit on the highlights. The regular, just let me just say, the regular wages and salaries, that increases just for the assessor because that contract's in place. The other staff members are in negotiations. Overtime. I'd like to address this. This is a matter of, we have a vacancy and have had for over a year and a half of a data collector who does a lot of building permit work and our part-timer. We haven't been able to hire anybody, so I have a staff member now who's working over 40 hours and another staff member who's working up to 40 hours. So I've taken the wages, well, I was supposed to have a transfer before when you canceled your appointment, from the vacancy to overtime so we can finish our permit work. So what I did this time in the budget is I tried to increase the overtime because there's no likelihood in the near future of me getting that position filled. And we need to complete our work for the grantless, which is, there's a great deal of building permit work and I only have one person doing them now, plus a vendor. And this also falls in under the category of appraisal services. My commercial appraiser who goes out and does building permit work, he's also been overloaded because we're short-staffed. So I had to increase the amount of money that I was paying that commercial vendor. So that would include the increases under appraisal services and under the overtime.
Okay.
The other increase is down under dues and subscriptions, and that is based primarily on DMV. Our file we get from DMV, we always paid $990. Now it's up to $2,400 a year, just to get the file and 14 books for pricing. So that increase came last year, and we had to juggle some money to pay for it because it came at the last minute, and it wasn't under another category. So I had to increase the budget for that, for the DMV file.
Okay. Thanks, Barb. So the request is for $494,271. Is the request from, any questions from the board with regards to this
Yeah, two
budget?
questions.
Harry, go ahead.
On the open position, is it market conditions or the specialty?
Well, it's a
Or people not wanting to
specialty,
go
but
back to work?
it's also, all the assessors' departments throughout the state are having a hard time getting staffing. Staffing is not moving like they used to, going from one town to another. They're pretty much staying where they are, and the pool isn't that great. I mean, you just can't bring somebody in and have them go out and measure and list and be in taxpayers' home if they don't have some kind of training. So the applicants just aren't there. In the past, we used to be able to get appraisers. My last client, the previous one was an appraiser, and when the appraisal field dried up, they all had expertise, and we could use that, but the appraisers aren't even applying anymore. So it's the pool. Yeah.
Second question, when are we up for reevaluation?
Well, I was going to address that under capital.
Okay.
Okay. 2024. The next budget I have is Board of Assessment Appeals, or do you want me to do the?
Yeah, why don't we do capital on
Okay.
page 1 of our, and it's reval sinking fund contribution of 90,000. And as you spill the beans, it's due in 2025?
2024.
Oh, 2024.
Yep. So I'm going out to bid this summer for the RFP, and it's an upgrade, it's an updated reval, it's not full measure and list.
Okay.
So the cost should be less, but the problem is that when we did this 10 years ago, an upgrade, I had 2 staff members who did all the building permit work. So we saved the town a lot of money. Now I just have my 1 staff member. So I'm hoping the way I wrote the RFP is that if we did hire somebody, we'll be able to save that cost on the reval company not doing the permit work. But it's all based on the staff I have.
Okay,
So it's going to be in place for October 1, 2024.
gotcha. Okay, questions on the capital request or other questions of the assessor? I see that the grand list is up by 1.8% or something? I think
Yes.
that's probably it.
Well, actually, the Board of Assessment Appeals has finished, and I was working on the numbers today and trying to balance, so I should have that to you before your next meeting on Thursday.
Is it going to go up or down?
It's going to go down.
Thought so.
Well, the board always makes changes.
Yeah, they do. They should make them going up.
I know. But the biggest problem is, one of the things that brings it down a lot is that we have to do all our prorates for our motor vehicle through the BOT. So that's a big chunk. It's anybody who's come in and asked for an adjustment on the motor vehicle. So we do that through the BOT, and that takes quite a bit down.
Right. Through the bot, explain that?
Through the Board of Assessment
Oh,
Appeals.
but yeah.
Because we find if we do it then you set the mill rate at a more accurate collection amount for the tax collector than waiting till July after you've already set the mill rate to do all the prorates. So we do them ahead of time.
So Jim, if I look at page 2 of the budget, what am I looking at here? 22, you got a 3.3 billion 898. But on the budget page, I got 3,879,000.
Yeah, so if you see that footnote there, that's anticipating reductions from tax appeals and also the adjustments she's talking about.
Okay, so, that's to my point, okay?
Yep.
My question, okay. So that the 3.8 billion, 3879 is what...
So you won't have to adjust it
You
lower
should have to
when-
adjust it.
when-
She's been talking to Barbara, and that's the adjustment downward, so, okay.
A lot of our appeals were settled.
Yep,
We have a few that came in through the BOT, this Board of Assessment Appeals
gotcha.
this month, but
Okay, all right, so that's good, so it is what it is.
getting ready for the next review.
Right. Questions? Questions from our TM members, general public? All set, thanks.
I have Board of Assessment Appeals.
Oh. Okay, stick
I could go,
around.
but you're just going to call me back. So.
Page 16, you're right, I've forgotten that
The only increase there is just the
Seven
regular
minutes.
2%. They have no other increases.
So the request is for $14,625, increase of $265. Are there questions from the assessor with regards to this budget? Questions from the audience? Okay.
Okay?
Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome. Good evening, folks.
Yeah, take care. Next up is executive, page 12. You can stay there, Jay, if you like.
Sure, okay, thanks. So really, the only major change you're going to see on the personnel is in seasonal and part-time help, where you see an increase of $16,621. That increase is really, as you know, the part-time that was currently in there was for the economic development manager, and that anticipates a 2% increase for that position. However, we did have hours for, you may recall, the RTM created the need, passed a blight ordinance, which necessitated the need to bring on a blight officer for the town, so that will be under the executive budget, that position. So there's hours budgeted for that part-time position for the blight officer. So that's the additional $16,000 is for that purpose.
Okay.
All right. Moving down to non-personnel, I mean, really, no significant changes. The only changes you see really have to do with dues and memberships, Council of Governments, dues increase, and memberships and conferences and meetings, that was for another increase to the chamber, was in that increase. Those are the drivers for the non-personnel.
Thanks, Jamie. So the request is for $330,091, increase of $19,987. Questions from the board? Questions from the audience? All right, thanks, Jamie. We'll move on to the next one, which is legal services, page 19.
Yeah, so we're holding those flat for this fiscal year '24, $270,000 for counsel and legal advice, $30,000 for expenses and claims, and $150,000 for tax appeals.
Okay.
No changes.
No changes there. Questions on this budget? Questions from the audience? Okay, thank you, Jamie. Next is, Elise, you could stay there if you like. You're gonna come up? All right, page 11 is the legislative budget, and the request is for $18,766.
So the only changes here are the two board clerks and moderator, 2% increase on part-time elected official salaries. And then I increased office supplies by $50 since it's a municipal election year, and we may need to have new nameplates for any new reps that are elected.
Okay, thanks. Questions on this budget? Board members?
Nope.
Members of the audience? Okay, move on to the next, town clerk, page 18.
So I'm asking for 277,271, which is a 0.7 increase over current year. My three staff members are in negotiations, so there's no increase there. The increase that's showing under personnel is for the town clerk. You will note under non-personnel, I have two new accounts for this year. Other purchase services, $100. We are now responsible as a department to cover our own shredding expenses, so that covers shredding of miscellaneous documents for the year. The other new account is purchase services, repair and maintenance, $500, and that's to repair our vital record seal machine. The machines last us probably 10 years, but the die over time needs to be sharpened, and that's what that cost is covering. Professional development and membership conferences, I've increased. I do have a vacancy on my staff, and I expect that we'll be filling that soon, and the costs go along with bringing that person up to speed for training and development. Basically, I think I covered
I
everything.
think that's good. Questions on this budget? $277,271, increase of $2,000. Charlie?
I'm trying to remember, but in past years, didn't we have a problem or an issue with the safe,
Vault.
the vault?
So that falls under the repurposed sinking fund, if you will, for the vault upgrades for new shelving, new HVAC, any upgrades to the vault, and those funds were rolled over into a new or current project. We expect to embark on projects to use those funds in the next year or two. That falls under GGB.
Been upgraded then? And the vault has not been upgraded?
No. The funds that you're referring to, Charlie, are, I think it's $112,000. We have not funded that account in several years, but we feel strongly that that's adequate funding to take care of the HVAC, the mechanicals, removing them from the room to either the exterior of the office or the exterior of the building, as well as additional shelving to accommodate any future record storage.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Other questions on this budget or requests? Questions from the audience? Okay, I think you're all set, Lisa.
Thank you. I just want to point out that on the revenue side, real estate conveyance is at a nice big fat plus. We're over budget right now of $192,000. That's good news, because in town clerk other monies, the revenue side there is down, and that's due to the vital records portion of our miscellaneous money that we take in are now through state online portals. So being a hospice town, we would enjoy a lot of revenue for certified copies of death certificates for folks that passed in Branford but that lived in other towns. Now those folks, say somebody lives in Torrington, they pass away in Branford, they can obtain those certified copies in Torrington based on this online portal. So due to that efficiency, we are seeing a reduction in our vital records revenue. And also our land records, as you can imagine, our recordings are down because of the market and interest rates. So the good with the bad.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that update, Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Okay, next budget, and we're moving into the Rules and Ordinances Committee purview for the RTM departments. Building Inspection Enforcement, page 37. Welcome, Tony.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so today's budget presentation is on page 37. It's an overall increase of 1.4%. Just hitting the highlights, we are asking for an additional $5,000 for our consulting services. We hope to push him to a 2-day-a-week to a 3-day-a-week person to help with the uptick of construction that we've been dealing with. And we're also asking for an additional $200 in our office supply this account has remained flat for the past 5 years. So we feel that with the cost of increase of goods and papers and things like that, that we need a little bit more money on that.
And $1,000 for online services.
Excuse me?
Online services is also up by
Yes.
$1,000? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. On the revenue side, for 2021, we collected $814,000. For 2022, we collected $1,095,000 in permit fees. I ran the numbers as of today. We're at $670,000 in permit fees, so I am anticipating hitting that million mark again this year. Some of the highlights to the department, I can go over just a couple, just real fast.
Sure.
We processed 2,967 applications. Of those applications, 40% of them have used our online payment portal. That means that they've submitted the application through our portal and made payment through our portal without even coming into the office, the 40%. So that was a pretty good number to see.
Sure.
One of the highlights of the department is we upgraded our permitting platform from Enterprise to City Suite. So it's now a cloud-based system, which actually puts, right at our fingertips, our office. So we've got now iPads that help us track our inspections and do our inspections in the field and allow us to not only conduct the inspection, but to notify the customer by email right away, in instant time. So I mean, this has just been
That's nice.
a godsend to have the office in the field
Right.
without having to go
Back
with
to the office.
paper and back and forth and making phone calls, and it's such an efficient time saver.
That's great.
The last leap of this is going to be a platform called Citizen Access. And at that point, people will be able to manage their own profiles and permits and check on reviews and statuses and everything else like that.
Oh, neat.
So that's our last leap of the project, and I want to thank Jamie for his support on this, and Debbie Cameron, too, has been instrumental in helping us through this.
That's great. Okay, questions from Tony on the building department?
Tony,
Yes,
I'm sorry, Pam, did
No,
you?
that was a cough.
yes,
On consulting services, is that all one consultant?
yes, it's one person,
Okay.
that's correct.
No, just, you don't have to use.
He's a Branford resident. He's a retired railroad electrician. He's an E1 equivalent, and then also an electrical inspector. He's been with us for, I think this is going to be his 15th year now.
Well,
His rates are pretty good. They're certainly under what the going rate is out there, and I think that he's really giving back to Branford because he's a Branford resident.
Great, thanks.
thanks for that information. Questions, other questions from the board? Questions from the audience? Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
We're all set, thank you. Good luck. Next is Water Pollution Control Authority. Call page 65 and 66. Welcome, Brian.
Well, good evening. My name's Gino Carano. I'm the operations manager at the Water Pollution Control Facility. Brian wasn't able to be here, so.
Is that Gino?
Gino, Carano,
Yeah.
Carrano.
All right, welcome, Gino.
Thank you very mumuch. I was sent here to present the budget.
Yeah, they just didn't give me heads up, what are you gonna do? But, that's
This was
right.
my big shot.
We'll take care of you.
So, yeah, you guys have everything in front of you. If you have any questions, I'll do my very best to answer them for you.
All right, so I'll lead you through this. On page 65 and 66, we have a total request of $4,813,105. Decrease on the personnel side because we're in negotiations. And we go to page 66, employee benefits, increase of $43,000. That's the allocation, Jim, based on anticipated expenditures. And really, other than that, you have Consulting services, which is an increase of 10,000. Do you know anything about that?
We have a lot of projects coming up, and Brian felt that we had a need for having a consulting firm to use AECom at the plant, and it's just an anticipation for future work that we have coming up for design and stuff.
Okay. And then purchase services are up by 7,500 on small comparatively, $438,000, but it's only up by 7,500. That's inflation and other anticipated expenses. Equipment is up by 5,000, again, a small 5% on that budget line item. So total increase is minimal, $15,215, 0.3%. Do we have questions? Does the board have questions on the operating expenditures of the, we call it the sewer utility fund, essentially?
I was just curious about the, in chemicals, down 22,000.
I can tell you that the reason for that is the only chemical we actually use now is hypochlorite, and that's only for if we have filaments or if we have high SVI numbers, and that's the only time we use that chemical. There was potassium permanganate they used to use, and that hasn't been around for many years. And also sodium hydroxide, we don't really use that anymore as well. So there was, that could be cut right out of the budget. We don't need that expenditure anymore.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, other questions on that? On the operating side, are there questions from the audience on the expenditures? And I see that we have, again, an operating transfer in of $600,000 as we've done in the past, and the other anticipated revenues that Jim has put together with Brian. Questions from the audience with regards to the operating budget? So, Gino, then we'll move on to the capital requests, which is on our page in the section 76. There's multiple requests in here. So, let's see, 76. First up is the submersible pump station repairs and rebuilding. That's your sinking fund, basically, $50,000. 51 pump stations, 20 are submersible pump stations. That's the part of the normal cycle, I believe, Jim. So that's, we'll move on to the next one, which is the sewer line and manhole repair, again, $50,000. Similar to prior years. That's the only thing this doesn't show is the prior year approved on this, on the capital side,
No, because it's not in there yet.
Okay, it's not in there, but
starting from-
we'll see that historically going forward. It's always good as a reference, you know what I mean, because you don't,
Yeah.
because everything else we see actual or something, but just a comment as we move through this. Next is your generator and transfer switch for $25,000. That's a sinking fund, or that's a planned expenditure?
It's been a sinking fund.
Yeah, actually, if you could go back to page 66, that's where all of those sinking funds are generally funded. So you can see you got $125,000 into the capital funds, that's funding some of the sinking funds. So this year, the $150,000 got reduced to $125,000. That's reflected in the apparatus sinking fund. $225,000 goes into the sewer reserve and $75,000. So this is where you see that money coming out. And to your question, Joe, about the prior year, all of that is $450,000.
Okay.
So this is another way to track it.
All right, thanks, Jim. And then we have the sewer reserve with the $225,000. That's what's the balance in that sewer reserve fund? Trick question for tonight there, Catherine.
Get that access to the system.
this is as of 2022, unaudited.
Okay.
5,163,545.
545, okay. Okay. And then we have the apparatus fund contribution, 75,000 to the sinking fund. What's the balance in the net sinking fund? Unaudited.
Right, June 22, 228,000.
228. So are you anticipating purchasing equipment in this next
We are
fiscal year?
anticipating purchasing at least 1 or 2 new trucks for the year. We want to replace somebody, we have an older truck that it needs to be replaced. So instead of us getting a pickup truck, we were going to get a utility rack body vehicle, so it'd be more useful, putting a sander on it, doing cleanups at the pump stations and around the plant.
Okay. And Gino, what's your title there?
I'm the operations manager.
Okay. Well, you did a great job tonight. You can report back.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Are there questions on the board on this these capital requests? Questions from the audience? Okay, all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up is inland wetlands, page 26.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, Jamie Frederick is, she's out, and she sent us a letter, basically, and, you know, there's very few changes in that, so it's generally flat. I can tell you exactly when I grab it.
It's 143,683 is the request, and as Jim pointed out, it's relatively flat, 0.9%, $1,252 increase, nothing on the non-personal, and only on the regular salaries and wages.
Right, because the director of inland wetlands is in the supervisors union. That is one of the few contracts that is actually settled, so
Okay.
that's her increase.
Okay. Questions on this budget? Questions from the audience? Okay, thanks, Jim, on that. Next is planning and zoning, page 23. Request of $345,313. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you.
Chuck Anderson, the chair of the commission.
It's welcome.
So I think I'll just start off with the revenue, be out of order a little bit. We're projecting an increase of about $3,000. We've been taking in more, as you heard from building. Applications are up, workload's up. So we're actually moving the budget estimate for what we're going to take in next year, in the coming fiscal year, in terms of revenue up a bit. I mean, we don't take anything in like the numbers building does. We're talking about, you know, $30,000 probably this year, maybe 30.5 versus 26 that was in the budget.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I mean, it's a reflection of what's going on. The only real increase proposed is for advertising. Again, that's a reflection of the cost of legal ads in the newspaper. Still required to do that despite efforts in the legislature to remove that requirement. There's some lobbying against that, so we still have to bear that cost and do that. So we're projecting about a $500 increase. We're going to run over budget this year a bit, so we'll have to do some money shuffling around afterwards once we get a big handle on that. You'll probably notice there's a decrease in the budget, and that is due to the elimination of the part-time person we had, basically filling in for the ZO during part of their tenure. They've been here about 1.5 years. This particular person lives in the town. He was a former zoning officer in another town. He retired. The guy that was in the position took his job. So we were very fortunate to get him. You know, I understand that the part-time position, we proposed that, I think, 2 years ago, and it was never initially discussed to keep that on. And definitely, I accept that, I understand that. But I just feel like I need to make a pitch for some help. We do have, you know, an increase in application loads. We've also had, you know, a lot of staff turnover. So that part-time person spent about 1 year of their 1.5 year tenure either filling in for the ZO or helping to train a ZO. So we've had 2 new ZEOs in the time he's been here. And overall, since I've been here, we've had 5 ZEOs, and I've been here 8 years. This is from 2015. And we've had 3 assistant planners.
High turnover.
It's a high turnover. We lost definitely 2 of the ZEOs, the better paying towns, and I know that's something we can't take up because they're in the union, as part of this budget process, but it is a fact we got to cope with. And it makes it, difficult to provide services on a continuing basis, so. That part-time person has really helped out, and I really appreciate the fact that we've been able to fund it for the last couple of years. But I will say, the workload's still there. I could give you a little snapshot of the number of applications on the agenda
Sure.
for, I picked March and October, and I think it's the same thing I did last year, but since 2014 in March, 2014 was 6, just going through the years, 15, 5, 6 the next year, 12, 7, 11, in 2020, 19, in 2021, 20, in 2022, 20. Again, these are just numbers. I mean, each application is not equivalent in terms of the time it takes to go through, but in October, it's a similar thing, 2014, 11, the next year, 11, 14, 11, 9, 14, in 2020, 21, in 2021, 17, in 2022, 16. So it's a reality. I don't see it abating. I think the economy is booming. You can see all the construction going on around town, which is another part of it, because once P&Z is done with it, it's not all over. But, that results in some difficult meetings and long meetings sometimes with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I don't know if you want to say anything about your take on it.
It's certainly, we start our meetings at 7, we meet twice a month. It's not unusual to go over 11 o'clock. I mean, and it's,
Yeah.
it's just, we want to get the stuff done. So.
Well, thank you for your volunteerism.
Sure.
So, okay, questions from this budget? $345,313, Harry?
Could you, in terms of the classification of what's coming in, is it commercial, is it storage facilities?
It's a mix, we've got an R&D office facility going up right on the Guilford line, brand-new building, and part of the old farm out there, right on the edge of town. There's a lot of housing going on. We've probably got at least 300 units in the stages of approval construction, waiting for different things. We've got another developer interested in building another 120-unit building on a parcel in town. So there definitely is demand out there. It keeps going.
And most of these are rentals?
Yeah, the housing is mostly rentals.
Mostly rentals.
Yeah.
So that's quite the market along 95 here, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we did get a 12-unit subdivision, traditional, approved way up at the end of Cherry Hill Road, Autumn Ridge. They just went through, got approved last meeting, so there is a mix, too.
All right, so you believe that the economy is booming because of all this building that's going on?
Well, I don't know about the general economy. I mean, I think Branford is doing pretty well.
Yeah. No, but that's what I mean.
I got a pint about that.
The economy in Branford is booming.
I think, there's a lot of interest in Branford. It's a desirable community. There's a lot of projects. We're getting a lot of phone calls. There's a lot of activity. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
So, I mean, I understand that, the position was taken out, and I accept that. However, I'd make a plea for at least adding maybe some consulting money back in to give us a little bit of a cushion in terms of workload, so.
We'll take that under consideration.
I appreciate that.
And, okay, any questions, again, from the board? Questions from the audience? All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is ZBA. I think you're still here, Harry, right?
All right, I'm still here.
Nice try.
Now you're alone.
I was at least on 2 feet. This one, not so tough.
And he ran away quick. No. Request is for $10,838, increase of $1,346. Generally on advertising, printing, and binding, $1,250 increase.
Yeah, there's really very little story here. Again, the revenues are up. So we've had more applications. So I propose an increase in $1,000 from a $2,000 expected revenue to $3,000 in the next fiscal year. Given what we've gotten to date, actually for the first 6 months of the year, I expect about maybe $3,500 as revenue for this year. So that requires more advertising, so we're already going to be over budget in the advertising and the cost of putting advertisements and notices in the paper. So I bumped that budget up a little bit. And that's really it.
Okay, questions on this budget? 10,838. Questions from the audience? Okay, all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Conservation Commission, page 50. Welcome. It's Heather? Yes. Okay. Budget request, $11,731. $19 increase. I see that.
Is that in the board clerk, in the personnel line item?
Okay, yes.
Okay, that's our only increase for this year.
Okay. And are there something you'd like to add?
Just some highlights.
Sure.
That we're going to continue some of our highlights from this year in continuing with installing additional pollinator pathway meadows. We will have the Earth Day and the Branford Festival booth again this year and next year, and we'll distribute native plants and trees. In next year's budget, those trees will be distributed in the fall, which is a better time to plant, and there'll be tublings instead of the bare roots we did last year. We're hoping to have a vernal pool survey of our unique habitat that we have here in the Northeast that support the salamanders and the frogs. And then next year, our budget we might use to do a different taxonomic group survey, perhaps with butterflies and moths, to see how our environment is doing by looking at those taxa.
Okay, very interesting. Questions from Heather on this budget of request 11,731? Okay, no takers here. Questions from the audience? Okay, thank you. You're all set. Next is economic development. This comes under, again, rules and ordinance. There's Perry's here, page 25. Morning. Welcome, Perry.
We here that long?
One of those days, I guess. One of the weeks.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Okay, so you have the budget in front of you. We have a little bit of an increase, but that's because we are planning on marketing more heavily through our website and other programs. We established the website a couple years ago, and at that point, we did have a lot of activity, and now we need to maintain it, update it, and everything else. So that's where the major expense is. I do want to apologize. I was unable to spend a lot of what you guys gave us last year, but there is definitely some things here that we are definitely going to work on now that we are pretty much post-COVID, and more functions will be happening, including we're planning on doing a State of the Town and other functions that draw things in. I will also tell you that this town's a very easy sell. We have a lot more to offer than a lot of the nearby communities, and we are seeing a lot of that coming to us, and that's also, with the work that everybody here does, it really makes a difference.
All right, thanks. Requested $23,550. Is there questions on this operating budget? Okay. None. Questions from the audience? All right, thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Next up is the debt service and contingency, and under the purview of Ways and Means. Page 53 is debt service principal. Jim, you'd like to cover that?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of group these together, the principal and the interest. As you can see, in this case, when you take both of them together, it's relatively flat. And essentially, when you look at the components of our debt, the largest piece when you look at the principal payment is the schools. Our debt service is below 8% of our budget. Having said that, we know that we have some potential projects down the road. I mentioned the other night that the animal shelter is still unfinanced. That's not the whole project because we had donations, we had some money out of fund balance, et cetera. Also looking ahead, you look at some items in the capital plan. We just did a $325,000 for the police. That's likely, but not guaranteed to be an appropriation down the road. And you also have some roofs, and we talked about a field study, which could relate to some things. So this budget contemplates a new issue in the fiscal year. It's possible that we won't go through with it, but we're watching where the interest rates are. If we think they're going to be lower, then we would obviously try to hold off, but we can't hold off indefinitely because, as some of you may have noticed, when you approve a bond resolution, there's a language in there about reimbursement periods, and so there's different tax laws regarding that. And so probably about the latest we can go is into early year calendar 2024, and when we have to issue either notes or bonds to replace that. So currently we're sitting tight, but this budget does include some money for a new issue. And if you look on the interest page, it just says bond payments interest at the top, that $325,000, and that essentially isn't allocated to the different groups because we don't know exactly how much or the specific projects that we'd be including in that. And again, that's roughly about a $15 million issue, give or take a few $100,000. If rates are higher than what we're projecting, we can lower it. But again, that's what we're looking at. I used to be able to say we were doing refunding to save money. I used to be able to say that we're issuing at record low interest rates. Times have changed, so I can't say that anymore. But our debt profile is still very positive, and we anticipate it will be going forward. And as we always have, we'll try to blend these future projects against the existing maturities to try to keep the debt service relatively flat going forward.
Jim, is it still 3 years for bond anticipation notes, or what's the clock?
After 2 years, you got to make a principal payment.
You have to make a principal payment.
believe, yeah.
And then you have to permanently finance in what period of time?
By that third, yeah.
By
So you do the 2 years, and then going
year.
into that third year, you would.
You have to permanently finance it, okay.
But the short-term rates are very high now, so the way the yield curve is, that's not.
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going with that. In a normal strategy, we did very well with that for, probably the last 7, 8 years. Is what we would do is we would issue short-term notes because it was a normal yield curve. So we'd sell at the short end of the curve, and then we would make principal paydowns against the debt. So we created our own structure because we always had new projects going into the market. And those paydowns actually built the capacity for the middle school. So if you think over the last couple of years, that capacity was built for the middle school, the community house, the firehouse, and you start looking at, not to mention the millions for the sewer system. So, and I'm probably missing one project in there, but a lot of those projects were that's how we basically looked at it. We sort of went out on the horizon. Can I tell you what's on the horizon now? I mean, we know, looking at some of the capital tonight, there's some large projects in there. The fueling station's $1 million. You have some of those grants that the engineering department had that require local matches. It's not uncommon for a open space purchase to become something that folks approach the town with, and so. But we do have that capacity, which is a good thing. Again, we're just selling at higher rates. But on the other hand, we're also investors in the market. I was thinking about this the other night when solid waste was presenting. When we're looking at that big increase in that budget, well, they sort of got bailed out by Jerome Powell because, we're budgeting $1,461,000 in interest income next year. So that helps offset some of that stuff. So again, I mean, we're reaping some of the benefits of the higher rates, but, we're also, bonding at higher rates. The good thing is a lot of our debt is locked in at very low rates. So.
Thanks, Jim. Good job on that. Questions on the debt service budget? Questions from the audience? Ma'am? Tracy? There's a microphone somewhere.
Tracy Everson, 5th District, RTN. When we put through bond resolutions, the question is when or what is that used for? In other words, is there a way or something in the budget or some kind of a report where we could see when we do go to bond what that money is utilized for?
Sure. What happens is when there's a bond resolution, that's what we're asking in regards to? So what happens is if in fact we have a large expenditure, as Jim was describing, that in fact that resolution comes to the board for a couple purposes. One is to authorize the expenditure, and that again moves through the process to the RTM and such. And it also authorizes us, the treasurer, to go out into the market spot and into the marketplace. So those documents then are looked at by bond counsel and then forwarded on to the underwriters into the marketplace so that they know that the authorization is appropriate and it's backed by the full faith and credit of the town. So it's like an indenture to some extent. It sets up the process for us to go out into the marketplace and borrow in the bond market. So then in that process, obviously when it comes to this board, you have a detailed description of what that is going to be expended on. A case in point might be the middle school, or it might be the firehouse that we built, or it might be the senior center and recreation department. And so you know that you're going to spend X amount of dollars for that particular project. It's segregated. Jim tracks it separately. The monies come in, they have to be accounted for separately. And then based on the input of Jim and others, they will finance it for a period of time. That, once it's similar to a mortgage or a loan payment, that then gets built into the debt service. So, and it's a fairly regulatory process, not only internally within the town, but in the marketplace. We can't go to market unless bond counsel approves all the documents that Lisa has to provide through the town clerk's office that certify that not only the Board of Finance approved that project, but it went through the RTM. It's went through any types of appeal period after the fact, and it's ready for the market. So it's quite an involved process, but fairly straightforward, I'd say. And then from there, when Jim goes out to the marketplace, he'd have put a prospectus together, and that again would go out to the potential bidders on the bond. Jim will talk to the rating agencies if there's any questions with regards to our rating or what's going on with the finances or other types of information that the credit rating agencies want. They'll go out and they'll rate the bonds, and then they'll price them and go through that process. Somebody will purchase those bonds, and they may be for a duration of some period of time up to that 20 or 30 year period. After that, the audit process then takes over. That would then go in and look at the expenditures to make sure that the expenditures that are booked are appropriate to that particular project. So there's a lot of checks and balances. The last piece of it would probably be if it's a school bond and there's reimbursements, then the Board of Ed, the State Board of Ed would come down and look at the cost that we've charged to that project and then determine some type of reimbursement based on those expenditures. So it's it's a, you know, many steps depending on the type of construction. There may be grants, there may be energy grants that come back. So again, it's, those are all part of the process, though. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think my point was that is there like an annual report or something, so we know, other than if we're reading, if we go to bond. In other words, we aren't necessarily notified.
Well, you don't need to be notified. Let's put it this way. It's, there's, after the fact, it's included in the audit. There's ordinarily, it's, there may or may not be heads up as to the fact that you're bonding, that we're bonding, or that Jim is renewing the financing. That's again in the purview of the treasurer, the finance director, and the first selectman's office to work with our underwriters and our financial advisors to for various reasons as to when we may go to market. So that's really not, the Board of Finance doesn't necessarily get directly involved in that. The RTM would not, that sort of thing. But again, it's public information. There's no, it's just, sometimes we ring the bell. I mean, if in fact, Jim will report that in fact we got a great rating, or again, we're AAA as we have been for years. Jim, you could throw a little bit of...
Yeah, and basically what happens when we do go to market, at least for a number of years now, I share the rating report with the RTM members, which many of them have received. The bond prospectus is something that's out there as well. I'm not certain that I've always sent that. But the bond prospectus will tell you what projects are being financed. In terms of us tracking them, once they're financed, we typically track them by category: general purpose, schools, sewer, et cetera. And in our audit report, the debt that's been authorized but not issued also shows up in our schedule of debt limitation. However, that number can, under certain circumstances, be inflated a little bit, and I'll give you an example. Joe mentioned grants and other things. So if you had a $10 million bond authorization, but the bond authorization said, which many of them do, that the amount of debt could be reduced by grants received. So if we were anticipating getting a $2 million grant, the most we would sell is $8 million. Now that $2 million difference that we're waiting for the grant would show as authorized unissued, because you authorized up to the $10 million in debt, and then once that project gets closed out, then that would come off the schedule. So Joe did a fantastic job of outlining all the different steps, and you know, again, it's something that's really done mostly on the executive end, although you know, certainly you know, it shows up in other reports, you know, the audit report or bond prospectus, but it's not something that, you know, the Board of Finance gets a report, say like they do pension quarterly reports, et cetera. So.
Okay, sure. Other questions? Okay, so thanks, Jim. We'll move on to the last budget for tonight. Contingency, page 59. Request of $2,152,061. Jim, you want to hit the highlights on that?
Yeah, the whole thing's a highlight, right? The whole thing's a highlight on this one. Sure, let me just get to the page here. So this might be one of the highest increases, 210%, and you know, sort of the obvious question is probably, well, why is it so high? And you know, I think it's been alluded to with a lot of the presentations that departments have made, with a few exceptions, fire being one, and departments that have folks in the supervisors unit, is that we have a lot of the contracts that are unsettled. And from, you know, from what we understand, and Jamie can correct me if he's heard otherwise, that at the present time, in terms of going forward, it doesn't appear that a lot of these contracts will be in a position where they'll be voted on by the RTM in this current fiscal year. Now you might ask, well, why is that important? Well, if they were to be settled in June, even though we paid them out sometime in the new year, we could actually go back because that liability was created. I mean, there is a small window where we would go back, but that doesn't appear to be likely. So when you start looking at all of the different groups, you know, it's everybody other than fire and the supervisor, and those increases compound. So, you know, let's just use round numbers. If it was a 3% increase, you got to come up with 9% in the new year because you're going to have the retro, and then you're going to have the 2 3s compounding in the new year. So you start looking at that. I mentioned the other night when we were talking about the pensions that, you know, the state is phasing in those large increases on the MERS side. CMERS, Connecticut Municipal Employees Retirement System. And so now you also have those costs on top of it. Some of these groups, bargaining groups, the largest one is police, and police also have overtime, so it's not just the salaries. So actually more than half of this increase is the wages and the related costs associated with that. That said, I mean, you still have what I would call some of the usual suspects as far as contingency goes, in terms of something for legal, a primary, the regular contingency, for example. We usually put something in there for the storms as well, if we have a bad year in terms of storms and fuel. That's another area that you know, we've seen some volatility in the last year or so. And as I mentioned during the fire presentation, there's $250,000 in contingency for the to continue a discussion in the future about increasing 2 staffers at the fire department. So it's all bunched in this area. So, you know, I don't know, there's not really a better way to say it.
No, that's,
I mean, you know,
that's normal explanation, Jim. And again, this year is a little extraordinary with the number of union contracts still outstanding. So that's good. Do we have questions from Jim on the contingency request, $2,152,061? You're all set? Okay. Questions from the audience tonight? Okay, so thanks, Jim, on that. And we're good for tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to recess the public hearings until Thursday evening at 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Moved by Pam, seconded by Victor.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.